We love looking at international stories. So I think there was a time in the past when there would be a story that we would find that was a hit show around the world, and we would immediately think about adapting it. But now we're looking at very, very international stories. So yes, US studios, US production companies are looking for authentically Korean and international shows. So I think Minari is a great example of that. I think studios that not only have production entities, but also streamers are looking for incredibly diverse stories. So yes, of course, we're looking for stories written by strong Korean writers with a real diverse background. They could end up on our streamer, they could end up as a feature, it could end up in any number of ways. Ultimately, maybe we will adapt it in the same way that people are talking about whether there'll be a Squid Game adaptation. Obviously, Parasite is being adapted into an English version. We're looking to develop original stories in their native languages and absolutely looking for strong Korean stories. I think it's very important, especially if you're pitching a Korean story to a non-Korean studio, to first of all find a shared reference points. A good example would be something that would resonate if you came to America with a story about a Korean family who moves to America and somehow gets involved in the very iconic riots that happened here in LA that had a very, very significant impact on the Korean American population. I think that's a cultural reference point that's shared, right? We know about the riots, they're known about in Korea as well. I think it's finding a story that is relatable both in the US and Korea, maybe finding that piece of IP that's already developed, right? I think if you're a writer, a new producer, a new production company, I think it's very important to come into your pitches prepared. But there's many ways to do that. But I think what I have found to be the most successful when coming in as a new face, either come in with a bit of IP that you might have optioned, whether it's a book, maybe a podcast, that gives you some sense of leverage, right? It's finding that podcast with 10 million listeners on Audible that maybe you were able to get the rights to. It's finding that book that might be a bestseller in Korea that has a shared cultural reference point and maybe optioning the rights to that. What I find with a lot of international producers and studios is that they'll come in with a project already packaged, right? They'll go to the people they know, right? And there's always a producer who will attach themselves to your project. But if you really want the most open-minded reaction, what I find is coming into a pitch with a little bit of a blank slate, listening. So you have your script, you have your outline, you have your Bible, you have your pilot episode, this is if it's for TV, and you don't come in saying that you have an actor attached, you have a director attached, because the minute you do that, that's all we're gonna see when we're hearing the pitch. Because studios have overall deals, they have deals with big name talent and writers and showrunners who they want to attach to your project. It's always best to come in with that bit of IP and be open-minded. Here's what I'm thinking. I would love to use this director, and do your homework. Find out the showrunners who have overall deals with Warner Brothers. Find out what actors have overall deals with Warner Brothers. Come in and say, this is a great love story between a Korean American, and I think this would be great for this actress who you have an overall deal with. Do the homework and think about why it might be attractive to the studio. Maybe it's supernatural, so you come in and pitch it and say, I think this would be great for Berlanti's company, because Berlanti does all of these amazing supernatural shows for CW. This would be perfect, rather than coming in saying, this is a slam dunk package, we have the director, we have the producer, we have the actor, buy it. It's more of a conversation, right? You want buyers and your future partners to not only see one way forward, but to see many ways forward. Maybe it can go straight to HBO Max. Maybe it needs development as a format at Warner Brothers TV. Maybe this is a reality show and we want to attach a judge who's a famous dancer or a singer. So think about it. Unless you have that AA list attachment, you always want to be a little open-minded. I think that works best. I think there was a time a few years ago when you would need to do a lot of development on a existing hit show from Korea that you wanted to adapt for international audiences. I think even if you look at The Good Doctor, I think, which changed quite dramatically from the Korean version to the American one, I don't know if you need to do that as much nowadays. And in this post-Squid Game, Hellbound, Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha universe we're in, where we're looking at Korean shows, and I think we're at the point now when most viewers are watching it and they don't even think they're Korean shows, they're just good shows. And that's a great place to be right now. So I think you really have to look at things like, we were looking at a show called Dr. Prisoner. Dr. Prisoner is about a baseball player in Korea who, on the night before he comes to America for his big contract, he ends up going to jail. There were elements of that were obviously perfect for America, the baseball, the prison system, all of that. It didn't need much development to get the project optioned at a studio. You just need to know your market. You need to know who you're pitching to. So I think there's, you need to find similar cultural touchstones. But I think you need to look at the things that make it uniquely Korean and find that US counterpart. I think that works well. But there's things that are absolutely I think something like Hotel Del Luna, Yumi Cells will work well because it's a drama. I think you need to figure out whether the main format elements are just as relatable. If they're not, try to find something as relatable to the people you're pitching to. I think a log line can work. I mean, honestly, ratings help a lot. So when we were approached by JTBC about Sky Castle, the ratings were almost like a broadcast network, but on a cable channel. That said a lot. Adaptation happened. We found our comparison here. There was a big college admissions crisis here, scandal, which was similar. So it's really being sensitive to who you're pitching. If there's something that's so uniquely Korean, whether it's Korean history, emperors, kings, and all that doesn't relate here, find your comparison, right? I think viewers just want to see shows told in a very succinct way, and I think it's come with just being inundated with shows from around the world. So as people are talking about Squid Game over and over, if you haven't watched Squid Game, you're not part of the global conversation. You literally seem like the least cool person on the planet if you haven't seen Squid Game. And I think this is happening more and more. It happened with Parasite. It happened with Minari. I think as it becomes part of the conversation, part of, as we used to say when we were in the office, water cooler conversations, it's irrelevant whether there's subtitles. And I think that's been a real boon to Korean studios. I think now people are making their viewer decisions based on how great a story is. Listen, this might be me, and I know some countries differ, and we sell our formats around the world. I want to hear the inflection. I want to hear the pauses. I want to hear the actor's voice. I think you're not getting the original experience unless you're watching the original actors speak in their native language and watching with subtitles. That's my opinion. I think what's really exciting is we're doing more and more now with Korean studios, international studios. It was announced a couple of years ago, we had a first look unscripted deal with CJE&M. We're in late stage negotiations on a scripted first look with a big Korean studio network. We're doing more and more in the collaborative space with Korean studios, and I think that's really exciting. And I'm looking at formats now that I love. I'd love to adapt, and I'll tell you what I'm watching, and I love, I said I love Yumi's Cells. I think it's brilliant because it really makes the most out of things that we're really good at a studio, which is animation and drama storytelling, and that combines both. I know from reading the news that our studio and New Line is adapting Train to Busan. I know about that, and obviously Turner does Snowpiercer. We're very, very active in the Korean space. My division, Warner Brothers International TV Production, produces Masked Singer in many territories. We produce I Can See Your Voice in many territories. We picked up a really great Thai format that we've now called Secret Duet, which just launched in Holland. There are many territories where actually Korean studios are now workshopping their formats, which we're working with. So we're doing a lot in Thailand now, when I know CJE&M and other Korean broadcasters and producers test out their ideas in other Asian markets, and we're looking at a lot of those markets as well. You know, I'm a big fan of Format East and what they're doing with new formats, and I love what Something Special is doing as well. I love the fact that it's no longer only networks that are producing content. So you have Something Special, a real indie in a very American way, coming up with very, very sellable, compelling formats. And we don't look at it, we just want great ideas. We want the next big Ellen's Game of Games. We want the next Bachelor. We want the next Masked Singer. And we're finding a lot of that in great incubators like Format East and Something Special, and working with Korean networks with their initiatives, you know, with their script writing competitions. And we're talking to them about getting involved in a very early stage. So we're looking for diverse stories, for stories that tell a strong, diverse tale. We're looking for reality shows that have a lot of play along. We love game. We're looking for more game shows. So I'm looking forward to 2022. Hopefully COVID will improve, and there'll be more studio shows and more game shows and more musical shows. And you know, we just want great ideas, and we're finding a lot of those stories coming from Korea, and we're excited for the next year.